everybody. I have Kara joining me today. Oh my gosh, you guys are going to love this. If you've ever had a kiddo that struggles with what you're feeding them or how you're feeding them, today we're going to talk about snack time, which I have questions for you. This is so good. So Kara is a nutritionist, but I believe you say, Kara, that you're not your average nutritionist because you work with kids and families.
Right. Yeah. And I also have a non-diet mentality. So I'm kind of throwing that in there. A lot of times you think a dietitian is all about diets. And so I'm not about that, but then also focus on families and just how to make kids feel better and eat better too. So
yeah, and I think without the conflict and without the shame. So yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about, you and I sort of have jammed before and talked a little bit about mindful eating and what it is, because mindful eating, for those of you who don't know, is not a diet. It's just a way of looking at the food you're eating. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Kara does have her course, How to Raise an Adventurous Eater. So if you want to find her, you'll see right on the banner there. You can go to her website and then just sign up for that course. But you're going to get some of the little tidbits and tricks today when we're talking about snacking. So let's talk about snacks. I am going to tell you that my family during the summertime, and I know I'm not the only one because I talk to my girlfriends and they're like, holy buckets, these children are grazing. They're like herds going through your kitchen and they just graze and leave everything out. And it's kind of a big mess. So one of the things we do in our house is we have a closed kitchen time because simply for the fact that I can't handle the mess that happens all day long. So you have lunch open from this time to this time. And then, so we kind of have designated eating times, but I don't know if that's just for my own sanity's sake. Like, I want to hear your expert opinion from a nutritionist on, is that a good thing to do? Is that not? Should I tweak it? What should I do? What should we be doing there?
Love everything about that. So you're right. Grazing is super common and something that we don't want. So for multiple reasons. And you're exactly right. I love the kitchen closed mentality, because one thing with, if kids are grazing all day and you have a quote unquote picky eater, it's because they're probably not hungry. If they're grazing all day, they're not going to be hungry by the time dinner comes because they've already met their calorie needs. And one thing about kids is they're intuitive eaters. So they're not going to eat just because there's food there. If they're not hungry, they're not going to eat. Right. And that's when there's that frustration at the dinner table, is because why are you not eating? And you've prepared this meal that their kids aren't eating, but it's likely because they're snacking throughout the day. And one thing about snacks is it's usually not as balanced. So especially if they're grazing, they're reaching for the dry foods like the Cheerios or the crackers. And there's nothing wrong inherently about those, but they're not getting a lot of variety if they're snacking all day and then coming to the table not hungry for the balanced meal that you spent so much time on. So I love the kitchen closed. One, because you're in charge then of when that snack time is and when meals are. And that just helps set it up for a better division of responsibility. So your child knows, okay, I eat when Erin is offering food, that's when I can eat. And that just helps to have that structure throughout the day. And it makes it so it's not such a battle between kids, because you're the one in charge, not the kids, of deciding, oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to go eat. You have set those guidelines, which I think is really, really important to do.
Yeah. So since you are you're into intuitive eating. So this is my next great question for you, because I agree with intuitive eating, but then sometimes you think scheduled and intuitive don't go together, because then are you really listening to your body if you have set schedules? Now, when I think about it as you're going to bed at night, because there's so much research out there about not having a full stomach to digest food on while you're sleeping, and how that can clean your brain out, so to give your brain a flush. But if it's using all its energy to digest at nighttime, you're not getting that brain flush that you could get that helps you. So tell me a little bit, like during the daytime, intuitive eating and scheduling and how they work together.
Right. So it can get kind of tricky, especially for adults with intuitive eating. We do encourage you, like, when you're hungry, go ahead and have a snack. I think as adults, we've lost that intuitive ability. And so we're avoiding that hunger. Like, that 3 o'clock comes around, you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm just going to ignore it. And so that's one side of things. But for kids, if they're grazing, they're also not being intuitive eaters because they're not listening to that hunger. They're just eating because, oh, I'm bored, or there's food here. Or oftentimes with the parents, it's you're fussy. This is for little, like smaller kids, but you're at the doctor's office and you just want them to be quiet. So you give them food as a means of like a reward. And that's getting away from that intuitive eating because you're using food as a reward. Or something besides just solving that hunger. There's something else that you're using that food for. And so that's where that intuitive eating is. It's not intuitive eating at that point. But if you're using food you have that structure, you can come to the table, not have those distractions. That's where that mindfulness comes in.
Right.
You're in charge of, okay, we're sitting at the table to have snack. We're not going to be playing or whatever while we're eating. And that's where they can be more in tune of, okay, they come hungry to the table and they eat until they're satisfied and then they leave. And that's where that intuitive eating comes in, because they're using food as a way to solve that hunger, that physical hunger, rather than just as a distraction or just because I'm bored. And that's where that they start to lose that ability to be intuitive eaters at that point.
Yeah, and they start to use food as kind of their emotional crutch for not having to feel whatever feelings going on. I noticed that a lot with if there's a downtime in schedule or boredom is setting in, they're, instead of settling with what do I want to do with the boredom for my own kids, they immediately are going to a cupboard to get a snack. And that's because that uncomfortable feeling gives that little bit of a stress response. But we have to teach our kids that it's okay to have that little stress response and you'll move through to the next thing. And you get to choose what you do that. But I think I do it too. Sometimes that little bored feeling, or I have a down minute creeps in, and immediately my little brain goes, oh, then you can walk over to the cupboards. But that's just that unsettling feeling inside of me. And so to be mindful and say, oh, I'm not actually hungry. I did just ago. I'm just trying to distract myself from that feeling that I feel of unsettledness. So I think that's, I don't know how you feel about that, but that's how I feel. And so trying to teach my kids that.
Yeah, no, I guess definitely agree with, there's that emotional hunger. And so we try to solve food with that with the emotion that we're feeling. But we really, and at times it's nice to have that comfort. Maybe in the winter we have a hot chocolate to have that comfort. But if we're using that as a crutch on a regular basis, then we're forgetting that food really only solves physical hunger. It can't solve the emotion. Like once you eat something, like the kids have whatever to eat, this could go for adults as well. And then that boredom is still there, or the stress or whatever they're feeling, it doesn't go away just because you ate something.
Right.
Might have just for like a tiny bit, but it doesn't really help in the long term. And so we really want to keep those schedules so that they're used to knowing, like, okay, I eat at these times because I'm hungry, not just going through the kitchen randomly throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that's great. So do you have any tips for parents that like maybe they can't, especially we have working parents home right now and kids are home right now, so they might not be able to monitor every snack that comes out, especially if you have, I would say, anybody 4 and up, they're probably maybe getting their snacks on their own. So what are some tips you have for how to still have a structured eating time, a healthy snack, but you might not be right there to like create the platter for them of things to eat?
Sure. So that's one thing of really trying. We love to have the parent in charge of what the child is eating as long as possible. So even like you're still in charge of what you're stocking the kitchen with. And ultimately we'd love to be able, like, it's going to be hard to keep your child from grazing throughout the day when you're not there. And so hopefully they have some kind of, if it's daycare or some kind of way to be able to manage when they're actually going to be eating the snack. And they can have a choice. So maybe it is like having ready maybe 2 different options that you'd be totally comfortable with them having. And so it could be having a little bin of your favorites, like it could be in the fridge of some string cheese or some clementines or easy things that they can grab. And then in the pantry having maybe some pretzels or some whole grain crackers. But we really would love to be able to make sure that the kids are having like some vegetables or fruits or some whole grains, like having a variety there, because that will just satisfy the child a lot more and keep them satisfied longer, rather than going, if you're stocking the pantry with crackers that are, or chips, or anything that's maybe a little bit less nutritious, not as satisfying, maybe something that's a little quick energy, sweets, that's not really going to be helping them in the long run. And that's kind of your job as a parent, is to make sure that the kitchen is stocked with those healthier foods.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the idea. And we do that here too. We do weekly family meetings. So we sit down and we actually do the grocery list together and the meal planning together with the kids. Each kid has a night that they're in charge of dinner, but then we also talk about snacks for the week too. And then those are kind of in like just big bowls, like fruits and vegetables. And so they know that I have older children, a little bit older children. So my youngest is 8. They know they can choose from those, but those are the snack choices for the week. So I may not be there when they're, when I designate open kitchen time for snacking. But they know that the 3 choices are in those bowls for what they can have. So it does help, and it helps me not run out of food. I mean, for a budget, looking at a food budget with 3 kids in the house, when I budgeted for this food to be in the house, that I'm not having them ransack every other thing that I'm saving maybe for next week, or for we're going up north, and that's for the up north trip. So it just helps in general. So I think you're right. I think as long as we keep some of those parameters in there, it just helps kids to be able to make those healthy choices.
Right. You still have to be their guidance. So we want them to eat healthy. We want to setting a good example too of what you eat for snacks, what you have for dinner makes a big impact as well. But yeah, I think there's no right way exactly of how you're going to handle, especially for older kids, of having the snack time. But it is important to have those set times of like, okay, we're eating, if you're hungry, this is when snack time is. But knowing that if you don't eat at the snack time, the next time the kitchen is open is at this meal. And so it's a good way of, okay, even if you're not hungry, that's fine, but you want to maybe eat just a little bit so that you're not hungry later on when the kitchen is closed at that time. But then just really having those options for them. If you're not there, just designating, like you said, you have those bins or you have those bowls so they know what they can go to.
Yes, definitely. Well, Kara, thank you so much. That was so informative, and we cannot wait to talk to you. Kara and I are on all week, so every day we're tackling a different topic. If you have a question about today's, put it in the comments, and we will make sure that we get in there and answer you. You can find Kara on her website, which is right on the banner below us. And you can check out her course, How to Raise an Adventurous Eater. And one of the reasons I got to pair up with Kara is because the Rooted Family Circle, our monthly membership, is focusing on the brain boosting of healthy eating and healthy exercise this month. So every month we look at a different brain booster. And right now we're looking at how food and exercise can help boost your brain. So you can go over to therootedfamily.com. And if you want to join us and get some, you're like, my family has fallen off the wagon due to the world circumstances, and you need help getting back on, both Kara and I have resources that can help you do that and get back on that wagon with you and your family. And we make it fun and engaging for the kids. So we will see everybody tomorrow at 10 a.m. Have a good day. Thanks for being with me, Kara.
No problem. Thanks for having me.